Today, there's a few fighters that need to be addressed for 2024. Some of them just need to pick the ball up. Some of them need to get it in gear. And some of them simply just need to get noticed this year. We'll be discussing these different fighters on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. We right back at it. We right back with it. Back with another video. Your boy Matt. This time what we're going to be discussing are fighters that need to pick the ball up in 2024. So over the last few weeks, it's the holidays, Merry Christmases and Happy New Year's and things like that. But one thing that I notice is most websites, most YouTube channels, most everybody in the MMA world has been doing their, Fighters of the Year, Fight of the Year, Champion of the Year, Knockout of the Year, Submission of the Year, so on and so forth. Which is all cool. It's all gravy, baby. I've been enjoying all of the content. So shout out to everyone that did one of those. But I was thinking for myself, for me, I didn't really know if I really wanted to try to do that. The reason being, I feel like everyone else has already done their breakdown. They've already talked about, who they feel is Fighter of the Year, so on and so forth. So what I decided to do is what we're going to talk about in this video. There are quite a few fighters that I feel like dropped the ball, maybe fell off, maybe didn't get noticed, or maybe didn't live up to the hype that we expect them to live up to in 2023. So we're going to talk about a couple of those fighters and how they can bounce back in 2024. So let's get into it. First off, we're going to start with everybody's favorite, famous dog owner, Israel Adesanya. So when you look at Izzy, when I think about it, back in November of 2022 is when this fall off began. That was the month, that was the card in which he lost his middleweight championship to Alex Poatan Pereira. And I feel like the lead up into that fight, the kind of disdain that he had for Poatan, the way that he kind of made it out like, the previous fights were flukes that they had in kickboxing and that he was just going to do him dirty in MMA. And then the way the fight played out, how he had Alex Pereira on skates in round one. Alex comes back in round two. Izzy takes round three. You know what I'm saying? And then Poatan starts turning up the heat. You know what I'm saying? And goes on to finish Adesanya in the fifth round. And I think that is what started the shift, in my opinion, for Israel Adesanya. Because I was one of the few people, roaming around on these internet streets who was like, he's maybe one of the best middleweight fighters of all time, but I just don't really like the dude. His character, whoever he's supposed to be, the things he talks about and everything, I just found him to be like, just lame, just whack, just terrible. And I would see, this wasn't the feeling on the internet until he lost that fight to Alex Pereira. So then the following year, 2023, which is now last year, early in the year, April the 8th, he has the rematch with Poatan Alex Pereira, in which he has one of the greatest knockouts of all time, one of the greatest in UFC history, and definitely one knockout of the year on a lot of people's year-end reviews, year-end awards. That was awesome to see. Shout out to Israel for performing that, for getting the job done. He regains his middleweight championship. Then he has the epic post-fight celebration. Bow, 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 and he's shooting the arrows in the Alex Pereira, and you're like, okay, this is cool. In my opinion, he dropped the ball immediately right after when he started mocking Alex Pereira's son, who was sitting in the front row while his father is still laying on the ground. But, as Izzy said, he gonna be petty. So that was what it was. And I feel like at that moment, Izzy kind of regained a lot of the fan base that he lost in the previous fight to Alex Pereira. But then this is when your boy, as in Izzy, really dropped the ball. Because over the next few months, he's talking bad about Alex Pereira. He's talking about Alex Pereira like the saga is over. I won the saga, even though clearly Alex Pereira had won more fights than Izzy had won. But he's making out like, oh, it's done. I finished the chapter. I finished the book. And you're like, bro, you're not even going to give him a chance how he gave you a chance, but alright. So then you move on from there. He's trying to rush. He's trying to hurry up because he wants to go to Australia to fight, right? So they try to rush Dricus du Plessis into a fight, who had just defeated Robert Whittaker and had a terrible foot injury. So Eugene Behrman and Izzy are talking all of this crap about Dricus du Plessis. They want him to go in there and fight. They want him to go in on 6 weeks' notice with a foot injury to face one of the greatest middleweights of all time. So Dricus is like, nah, I ain't doing that. So then enters Sean Strickland, a fighter in which Izzy had made fun of multiple times. Eugene Behrman had made fun of to a certain extent in his own way. He's not the best striker. You know what I'm saying? He did kind of, So the thing is when you look at this, they really kind of ridiculed Sean Strickland. As we go into that fight week, shout out to the MMA guru who really brought to the forefront a lot of the crazy pet and dog accusations and weird things Izzy has said over the years. And in my opinion, this gave Sean Strickland the ammunition that he needed to go in there and mentally dismantle Israel Adesanya, which then manifested itself, his favorite word to use, talking about Izzy, in the cage when he dismantled Israel Adesanya for 5 rounds straight, including dropped him in the first round. And ever since then, it's all been downhill. And he's never quite regained the fan support or even the legacy that he had prior to his fight with Sean Strickland. Shortly thereafter that fight, we find out that he got a DUI. He it's not anything he's going to do time for, but he definitely had to go to court. I'm not sure if that whole legal process is over because I don't know how that works where he lives at, but nevertheless, homie ain't doing too well. Alex Pereira, meanwhile, goes out there and fights Yuri Prohashka for the light heavyweight championship of the world, and he wins it. And immediately offers Izzy a shot at moving up and fighting him for that belt, in which Izzy just kind of played games with him, acted like, oh, why would I do that? And still throwing out his Elsa lines and all this stuff, which still have never landed. Still the worst line ever. I mean, bro, you can't write a worse joke than his Elsa jokes. But nevertheless, he pretty much just kind of S's all over Alex Pereira's offer. So now Alex is like, okay, I take it back then. I'm not really worried about you. I'm going to move on. So, from what I understand, the UFC is looking to make that fight between Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill once Jamal Hill is ready to go back in action. So there was an immediate title shot for him, an immediate already made storyline. Everything was laid out for him. All he had to do was accept it. He didn't, and Alex Pereira wasn't talking about he had to come back super soon. He still could have took some months off, but still, he didn't. And in my opinion, from what I see when you're gauging the temperature on Twitter, on Instagram, and on YouTube, that popularity that he had, it just hasn't returned yet. I'm not saying he's not popular. He's still popular, but it hasn't returned yet. So in 2024, this year, he's going to have to do something major to try to pull himself out of this rut and endear himself to fans, new fans, his old fans, all type of fans. Because right now, homie is not in the driver's seat as he was in the previous years of his career. As well as if he doesn't go back out there and make a major wave after taking that L to Sean Strickland, Homie's legacy could slightly be in jeopardy. Not really, but slightly. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about this is supposed to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, middleweight fighter of all time who took a 5-round L to Sean Strickland. So in 2024, that dude's got to bounce back. We got to see where he's going to go. But he's one of the fighters, in my opinion, he needs to come back strong and hard, pause, this year. Let's move on. Next, we've got John Jizones. John Jones. So, I'm a John Jones fan, as you probably know, because it's on the wall. A fan of the fighter himself, not necessarily the person. But nevertheless, John Jones in 2023 dropped the ball. We saw him return. We saw him regain. I'm sorry, not even regain. We saw him become the heavyweight champion of the world. And also, become a 2 different division champion. Not simultaneously, but a 2 division champion. And, so he had a lot of support. We're waiting to see what he's going to do, what's going to happen. Next thing you know, now, of course, this is not his fault, but he gets injured. But when you look at the entire year, 2023, homie wasn't setting the world on fire. People want to see him go out there and defend his championship against, heavyweights that he doesn't want to fight. New guys, up-and-coming guys, guys that are trying to get famous, guys that are trying to make their name in the division. I can understand John Jones after this many years in the game and his popularity and his status not wanting to jeopardize all of that. But, dude, that's what people want to see. We want to see you fight the new up-and-coming guys. It's just what it is. You can't fault fans for wanting to see you do that. He keeps avoiding that. He keeps pushing it on back burner because he wants to fight Stipe Miocic. So with that being said, they created that fight for Madison Square Gardens. John Jones gets injured. Tom Aspinall steps in against Sergey Pavlovich, and the rest is history. Now we have an interim champion in Tommy Aspinall. So, with all of that being said, John Jones, whenever he's able to return this year, he's going to have to come back with a vengeance. And I don't know what he's going to do because that vengeance is not going to be going in there and demolishing Stipe Miocic, who can barely walk, up the steps, down the steps. Homie had to sit front row outside the octagon because he wasn't going to make it up steps because his knees is shot. Hey, Stipe, where's your knees? Oh, they left me about 3 years ago. It just is what it is. I ain't got them. So, if John's thinking that he's just going to go out there, wash Stipe, which he will, and then just ride off into the sunset, and his entire legacy and everything will be intact, I don't know. I mean, yeah, granted, you wouldn't have lost anybody or anything like that, but at the same time, the best way to make a splash, to make a comeback in 2024, really, you shouldn't even waste your time fighting Stipe. I would just heal up the injury and start working and game planning and strategizing for Tom Aspinall. But if you must beat Stipe, go out there, watch Stipe real quick because he's missing not one but both knees. Go out there, watch him real quick. And then, if Tom has still got the interim belt after that, man, go on and start training, go on and start practicing, step in there with old Tommy Aspinall. Because if John Jones was to go out there and defeat Tommy Aspinall this year by the end of 2024, or at least get that fight signed for like first quarter of 2025, then if you beat Tom Aspinall right off into the sunset, now John Jones is already a made man, but he's really a made man. Who's touching that legacy, you know what I'm saying? But we'll see, because he just is dead set, him and Dana, and I don't even know if Stipe even talks anymore, but they're just dead set on making that fight. So we'll see how that turns out, but that's, in my opinion, what he would need to do to bounce back in 2024. Now, let's move over to another fighter, Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I just saw a few photos come out that Khamzat released where he had some sort of an illness right after his his win over Kamaru Usman. Also, I know that he broke his wrist or something like that during that fight as well. So, if you look back at Hamzat's career, he seems to really have a lot of health issues. And, a lot of them were brought on, by that thing that had us all in the house through 2020 and 2021, which we're not going to speak about on this video here. But nevertheless, he seems to have a lot of health issues. It's almost like he's too tough for his own body, and his body breaks down over time of all this training and all this madness that he does. If you ever watch any of his training videos, but Khamzat Chimaev needed to go out there because he barely fought within the last 2 to 3 years. He really needed to go out there and put on a show against Kamaru Usman, which is what he did in the first round. But then the second and third round, and a lot of people, I'm not going to push back against them. I scored the fight for Khamzat Chimaev, but there is a world where Kamaru Usman could have won round 2 and round 3 of that fight. You know what I mean? It was razor close between these two. But, that's not going to work out, man. That's just not going to work out. We need to see you go in there and do everything you did to Kamaru in the first round and win the fight. End it right there. Him prolonging it through 3 rounds and Kamaru almost making a comeback, way different. As well as everybody could plainly see that if it would have been a 5-round fight, Usman would have won that. So with that being said, now Khamzat is out again. He's still injured. He's had some sort of another illness which caused his face to swell up and his body was all broke out in all these photos. And you're like, bro, what is going on with this homie, man? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's should he still be fighting? Because it's looking, what is wrong with this man's immune system? You know what I'm saying? So, he is yet another one, in my opinion, that's going to have to do something major in 2024. Now, I see that he's always tweeting and he's always on the internet, kind of subtweeting people and calling for fights. And, he kind of got this rumor started like he was going to fight Izzy, which Izzy is shot down. So I don't know what he's going to do, but he is another guy that I feel like dropped the ball in 2023, and he definitely needs to pick it back up in 2024. He's definitely someone that we've been, he's been around in our MMA lives for like 4 years now, and he just can't get right. You know what I'm saying? He just stays injured. He stays kicked out of the octagon. Nobody knows why. Due to his ties to different people in his home country. I don't know if he can even fly into the U.S. I don't know what goes on with this man, but, he needs to try to get it together. Outside of that, there's a lot of other fighters that I could bring up, but these, to me, are the 3 guys that, these 3 are the 3 that we need to see pick the ball up for their own legacies, for their future legacies when you're talking about Khamzat, and for, their retirement if you're talking about John Jones. We need to see these 3 fighters pick the ball up in 2024 and just stop fumbling, just stop doing that. Well, while I'm speaking about fumbling, shout out to my guy, Action Jackson, Lamar Jackson, go Ravens. You know what I'm saying? We going to the Super Bowl. We taking the MVP. What's up now? But nevertheless, I appreciate you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I check you next time. Peace. Go Ravens.